Fans of past installments will probably remember the opening scenes of the main trilogy of the Soul series. An epic confrontations with dragons from the first part, a mysterious journey of the second, a brief acquaintance with the bosses from the trio, and what can surprise us with Elden Ring at the very beginning, flipping pictures in paint under the voice of the narrator. This should not be very beginning of the long-awaited game by many. The first exciting question is why Marika actually broke the Elden Ring. The official version presented in Round Table Fortress in the follows Marika is a fit of despair after the death of her son Godwin breaks the Elden Ring and world plugged into era of discord. Presumably this is all part of the larger plan to overflow the power of Golden Order, which doesn't really make sense when you got into details. Suppose Marika wanted to get out of influence of Golden Order and gave birth to a bunch of children to support himself. But the problem is that the destruction of the ring led to internecine wars for the power, and the end of which all the allies killed each other, leaving the new gods and no way artifacting the status of the Great Wheel. On the contrary, the Great Wheel itself decided that none of the offspring of Marika is worth a candidate for the throne and called the existing ones. It turns out that breaking the ring, Marika only achieved total betrayal of all fronts, complete chaos, and in addition strengthened the position of the Great Wheel, woman moment. Seen also for the status of chosen for the protagonist. To resolve the conflict, the Great Wheel encouraged the descendants heroes to complete the title of Lord Elden. It is not clear just what among the company makes the most omitted of the extinguish the main character. It is hard to believe in this status of the chosen one, because he does not have unlike skills the abilities, especially at the beginning of the game. And since we have touched their characters, the game has problems with naming. The names of the key plot characters are very similar. One can easily confuse Godfrey with Godfric and Godwin, Melina with Melina, Rena with Renala, Gadeon with Radan. Without a notebook in which the name of each will be named, it is almost impossible to understand all the wishes of the plot. How this elevator works. I'm not sure the present time is possible to achieve the effect of rising and falling columns. And if this magic of achievements of science, then why does everyone in the world still use torches of light, bows and crossroads for shooting, horses for riding? Some kind of selective technical progress in the world between the earths. Melina is a positive character of the game who helps throughout almost the entire passage. She saves us from the beginning, gives us a horse as a means of transportation, advises and guides the player through the story. Her only condition is that we deliver her to capital of the Earth Tree. But why can't she get there on her own? That is a captive of appealing legally of the air transporting the player to the fortress, but it is not possible to get to the tree on its own? And for that matter, why did she choose the main character in particular? If in beginning you refuse her, then Melina will simply continue to defy you, wait until the player agrees to the proposal. Where does the confidence come from that after one failure a second one will not follow? And if her goals is to get to the tree, can only the resurrected extinguish one who hangs out here for an hour and knows nothing about the world in which he is really helping this? The purpose of the barricades is to block the way, and these are set up in such way that this can be easily bypassed and also broken by slightest touch. With such strength, they would have fallen from the first wind. I want to suck. Where did those walls come from? I reviewed the material several times and I am sure that they literally fell from the sky. It's not that it's impossible in the game world, but it raises a number of questions. How did they appear exactly at the moment with the hero riding a horse? Who and how moved them? Considering that there is not single mage in Thunderways Castle, and also why simple wolves? If their task is to delay the hero, then why no use more effective opponent? A couple of such giants from the air right on a player's head could solve the problem. Who could dismiss these stories given that we have recently arrived in the inner earth and received the stream just a couple of minutes ago? And where does Rani get such confidence that the hero will return in Ella's temple on this very night? Because she appears here only once if you don't come. Skipping the dialogue, they will give us the ball already in the Fortress of Round Table. The respawn mechanics come from the Dark Souls series, but even Martin couldn't or didn't want to explain how it works. It is very strange that after the death of the hero, even the killed animals are resurrected again, and picked up items remain in the player's pocket. And if after death the body turns to dust, then how can runes lie in the place of death? It turns out that after returning to the place of grace, the hero remembers even the past, but all other characters and enemies do not. Are places of grace transferred the hero back in time, and no one but us can use this emboss feature? I highly doubt it. If Margate's task is not to the extinguished people pass through the castle, then why not just break the bridge, which is the only passage to the castle? This is much more effective than firing with every extinguished who arrived. In the course of the story, it turns out that Margate from the beginning of the game is Margot, who changed his name, but it was completely incomprehensible why he did it. If Margot didn't want to be unrecognized, perhaps he should have dressed a little more inconspicuously and not used a cane, his most recognizable attribute. One gets the feeling that this was done only in order to confuse the player, which sudden appearance in the middle of the game a certain Margot, who was one-on-one killed at the beginning of the game by Margate. And it's okay for him to walk around barefoot like that, given too much dangerous garbage there is. As so many things that can fit hero's inventory, no bags can hold as many swords and armor as accumulated throughout the passage. Moreover, many instances of the size exceeded the size of the character. There I could walk naked, jump and run as if there was ton of metal behind my back. This enemy with bombs, there can be infinite number of them, and it is also not clear where to store such an amount. Archers from the academy can also endlessly stuff the players with arrows. It seems that every bomb in the game has a magical bottomless bag with an infinite number of any items. This could be believed in the player did not have a quantumate limit of such items. In general, we will simply slap a scene for all these tricks and will not return to them anymore. Not red barrels that explode from any touch of them, some kind of incompetent cliche. The doorways and ceilings of the Stormscream castle are impossibly small to the big guy like Gorlek struck in Leave It. If Godric sew on all these arms to become stronger, then why is he so weakly using all the possibilities that open up after the increasement of many additional limbs? But no, Godric limited himself to only 2 axes. Also, he could easily collect about 5 axes, the same number of swords, and there would still be enough to spaces. Obviously, the magic in the world of Elden Ring plays a key role in the responsible for many fucked up things that we see, but how Godric managed to resurrect the head of the dead dragon without using any spells is not clear. Where do these opponents emerge from the portal? If Lake Liurnia is not very deep place, the water is almost to the hill. A jet of water released by crayfish, also it has fairly strong pursue. It's not capable of inflicting damage, knocking you down at most. How a thunder flower can grow, and even more so bloom under thunder strikes, given that the discharge caused damage the character. Why was it necessary to create a cemetery to the territory of Academy to scare the students? Here anyone somehow owns magic? Is it really impossible to just burn the corpses or turn them into something else? No, let the poor students be attacked by the dead and suck on the rest of the mana. A living jug is literally a vessel with arms and legs that has no eyes, and therefore cannot know where my character is. The Scarlet Wolf is Radagon's pet, which he left in the walls of the Academy, and it remains a mystery to me how he can cast various spells. And if Radagon himself taught him, then why is his magic not bright yellow, but orange and blue? And how did Redala, the full moon, allow the wolf to be left at the Academy? She made him her guardian. I remind you, the Radagons were love to Renal, and then when Godfrey was expelled from Indereth, Radagon left Renala, returned to the capital, and became the second husband of Queen, the second husband of Queen Marika. The second woman moment for the video, and I feel far from the last. How can a character survive being crushed by a big rolling ball? Even falling directly on the head will survive calmly. An incredibly beautiful boss battle arena. It's nice that the Japanese do not lose their grip and are able to surprise us. The Great Rune of Youborn is unique in its own way, because firstly, it does not need to be blessed, and secondly, it obviously works differently from the other 6. However, even this fact does not explain how, after defeating the boss, we get the rune stored in Amber Cocoon without breaking or even damaging it. There are a lot of different deadly weapons in Elden Ring. Swords of various shapes, katanas, daggers, hammers, axes, staves, Morning Star after all. And among all this diversity, the whip raises the most questions. Of course, the blows of the latter can seriously injure the opponents, perhaps even kill, but this does not apply to armored knights, mechanical maidens or destruction, and many others. Yes, there is a spiked whip, and Yurumi a magma candlestick, but a simple whip does not imprise much confidence. Naturally, the matter is not limited to the whip, so I'll put a common scene for all dubious weapon in the game. Red Rat is a very dangerous phenomenon in the universe of the game. Its negative influence contributed of the emergence of the Strani Vestals, and Melina, with the help of Rot, was even not able to poison of the body and might of Raiden, one of the strongest continents of the throne of Elden. But if the main character gets poisoned by the dangerous thing, then the difference from other negative effects are not particularly noticeable. Moreover, over time, the effect completely disappeared without consequences, which put Raiden in uncomfortable position. It is strange to see this outpost of the outskit of the castle of the Red Mane. Fireballs are thrown from the inside from the catapult, crossbows on the bridge. This is illogical, because inside there is an event to kill Raiden, half of the participants of which simply will not reach the place. Yes, and it's hard to believe that such a large installation can be controlled by one failed enemy. You can endlessly look at these things, how you are constantly killed in the game, and how long a sword ordinarily burns. The effects of any magical instruments in the game disappeared over time, and these swords both burned and continues. Why do the enemies pursuing the hero lose interest sharply as soon as he sits down to rest by grace? A great Dectus elevator is a large elevator that leads to the new Atlas Plateau location. To activate the elevator mechanism, you need to collect both parts of the Dectus medallion, which open the passage to the plateau. However, it is not clear who and why broke the medallion into pieces and scattered it into different nooks of crannies, given that you can get the plateau without using a lift. Why can't a character use a unique Ashes of War while riding? Yet there is techniques in which the whole body is individual parts of involved, but for example, the River of Blood can be safely used on horseback, especially since you can use magic on a horse. It's fun to see abandoned ruins throughout the world between the earths, while the old filmy wooden stairs and outbounding are still in good condition. The same can be said about ancient mechanisms. For example, in dungeons, I'm not sure exactly when were built, but I know for sure that without regular maintenance, the mechanisms are structured would have collapsed or ceased to function over time, and the caves would have been filled long ago. Many players have already spoken about this, but I cannot help but mention this big problem of Elden Ring bosses, or rather their repetition. If you played Miyazaki games, then you understand how clearly before, with a few exceptions, ordinary enemies in locations and bosses were divided. Each boss used to have a unique set of moves, equipment, and vulnerabilities to certain damage types, effects, and playstyles. Many bosses have their own arena of combat, some of which are arranged in such way as to make it easier or more difficult to player to fight the boss. Elden Ring erased this line, and now Magroth, who you defeated at the beginning, appears before you again, but already as a simple enemy. Or vice versa. Ordinary enemies, like birds or kidnapping maidens, have now become full-fledged bosses in some places. Of the 170 bosses, only 20 of them can be called unique. These are the same enemies with the same animations and techniques, only the status changes. After Magritte defeated us, his weathered body lies in the center of the stone circle next to Grace, and after a conversation with Melina, it moved behind the back of the throne. Probably the old man did not die, but just pretended to be. It's not clear where such a crowd came from for the holiday, and how they basically found out about it, given that I had only recently released a castle of the Red Mane. Probably agreed on Fantasy Skype. In the general is cured for eternal wanderings, then why does wander only a small beach, relative to the scale of the entire map? It does not look like eternal wanderings with the strings of capabilities, he can safely leave this location. Speaking of strength, according to the lore is very strong, not just a Palm Spartan but the most skilled warrior and Lord of the Stars. The latter allows him to influence the cycle of motions of stars and control gravity, but he hardly uses this ability even by 40%. Instead of lifting cobblestones, for example, he could easily lift his enemies and send them flying into space, or like Thanos bring down a hail of meteorites. The general launches 3 spears as a result of whole downpour falls of hero. Judging by the dazzling light from the impact of the graveyard, which is clearly visible even on starry wastelands, the meteor left at least good third of entire territory scorched. Well, a small crater, so a small crater. And the celestial body itself also has a drilling ability, like a drilling rig, which already got to Necron. The capture of a maiden is usually followed by death, or literally low amount of health. However, if the mechanism is allowed to have snagged, so to speak, with the main character, then after death he will suddenly wake up in a Vulcan estate. gate, located far from the place of death. No matter how much lava flows here, its level does not rise even in millimeter. It's funny that underwear protects against lava no worse than a most top-up armor. This is what the science of the inner Earth world has come to. Judging by the color of the metal, the bridge heated up to about 950 degrees, but the hot metal cannot cool down in just a couple of seconds. Neither the blow of X, nor the flames, nor the steps of the great giant had any effect of the frozen lake. It was very imprudent of the part of Melina, like this, to cut down the main character, the contender for the throne of Elden, very close to be burned Forge of the Giants, the fire of which burned the Tree of Earth for the second. One careless movement and the hero will calmly roll head over heels into the flame or burn out of spot. It is very strange to observe the hero after awakening in Fortress of Forum Azula, because it is not clear how he got here. Melina could hardly do this, since she set herself to free much earlier, and one can only guess about other options, because directly nothing indicates how hero got into such a hard to reach and mysterious place. The level design of Elden Ring did not cause delight before, rather annoyed with stupidity, but in Forum Azula it's reached its climax, and more stupid and poorly built location is still to be found. The constant levitating pieces of concrete on which you have to jump in a cube with terrible controls caused a nervous bumping and make a run through the same places over and over again. During a boss fight with a pair of divine skin, when we killed one, a friend again after a while, which is why there are always two of them in the whole arena. However, if you adapt to kill both before one of them casts resurrection technique, one will still appear after some time, which does not fit into the logic. Maliket is the keeper of the Rune of Death, who already once successfully pissed it off and allowed Godwin of Golden to be killed, which led to the destruction of the Elden Ring and all the accompanying events. So strange that after the first fuck, Marika didn't take the rune from the offender, didn't hide it where it would be safe, but simply left it to the one who already once allowed the fragment to be stolen, the third woman moment. By the way, how can a hero survive after being hit by a black blade of Maliket with the Rune of Death stored in it? There's one black knife enough to kill Godwin, and then multiple blows. It is strange that after defeating Gideon, we cannot use his ominous staff as a spirit for casting various magic, given that Sir Ominous himself perfectly mastered almost the boss spells in the game. The first time I didn't pay attention, but now I wondering, it is normal for Marika to have such a stone half bed or just a bed? Apparently prevention of osteochondrosis. The arena of the final battle is noticeably larger than one in the first phase. I didn't want to focus too much on the stealth of the bosses, but the Beast of Elden clearly deserved it. A big worm that constantly jumps around a huge area to which you need to constantly run, and after you reach it, it jumps to the other end, and so on until the end of the battle. Boring, uninteresting, monotonous, not as it seems to be final boss of such a promising game should be. When we first arrived at the tree, Marika's body was nowhere to be found, but in the end it is right there. How we kind ate before, Elden's throne was larger for a main character to sit comfortably on it. One big scene of the whole game and the series in particular, it's the narrative. Painfully bad with the storytelling from software. It used to be kind of unique to the Souls series, but Elden Ring doesn't belong to the franchise. It's a new project in a new universe, just from the same creators. Throughout the passage they threw the pieces of the lore you face, phrases related to the plot, the meaning of which you do not understand, and of course the good old description of everything and everything throughout the objects. It seemed that Monsieur Martin was supposed to fix this problem, but no. The writers sketched to the plot, but no one bothered to present it, for which the game gets 10 scenes. But Elden Ring has a couple of positive aspects that I would like to note. The huge open world obviously benefits the game. Traveling throughout the inter-earth, the hero constantly stumbles upon new locations, communicates with usual characters and fights opponent bosses. One feels the spirit of the journey, which strengthens the already long passage for another tens of hours. As great as ever the soundtrack written for the game. The soundtrack throughout the game is just an auditory orgasm on your earblow. And of course the location themselves and the whole game look incredibly beautiful, and also the game design was clearly written to fuck off. The game did not let us down graphically. Well, on this we will finish tearing our butts in the game and move on to subscribe to the channel for the thing don't break off.